The economic impact of Black-owned businesses is $1.44 billion. Now that's a great figure, and that's something we should be very proud of.
And if you're a survivor after COVID as a Black business, you're not operating in a small bubble. So if you're able to survive as a Black business, not only are you helping the Black community, but the community at large.
From WLWT, this is Let's Talk Cincy, presented by Western and Southern Financial Group. Put our financial strength behind you.
The economic impact of Black-owned businesses in the Cincinnati region is getting a lot of attention these days, and here's the reason why. The economic impact of these businesses is more than $1 billion in our area. Hello, everyone. I'm Curtis Fuller, and welcome to Let's Talk Cincy. A study by the University of Cincinnati Economics Center in partnership with the local African American Chamber of Commerce brings some good news. Today, let's talk about the ongoing effort by businesses to survive in the midst of a pandemic. Despite a crippling pandemic, Greater Cincinnati Black-owned businesses are optimistic about 2021. Members of the African American Chamber told me it's all in the numbers from a study from UC.
What we discovered is that the economic impact of Black-owned businesses is $1.44 billion. Now that's a great figure, and that's something we should be very proud of. And we're the first African American chamber to do a study like this in the country.
These businesses employ nearly 8,700 people, with earnings topping $500 million. The Black-owned businesses generate more than $6 million in state sales tax and $1.2 million to 5 counties in the Greater Cincinnati metro area.
And if you're a survivor after COVID as a Black business, you're not operating in a small bubble. So if you're able to survive as a Black business, not only are you helping the Black community, but the community at large.
John Moore is one of the people who can appreciate this frigid weather. He's a heating and cooling contractor.
Over the past year of COVID, we're deemed as an essential business. And we were able to, we had about 30 days or so, or 45 days where there was a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty in regards to what the customers were feeling, a lot of uncertainties in-house. What does this mean? How long are we going to be locked down? The ultimate thing that came out of it is we actually probably had one of our best years ever, surprisingly, as a company, due to the increased emphasis of people staying home.
Report, shows that 1.4 billion economic impact of African American owned businesses, and that is because they're adding value, and they are creating a ripple effect of value throughout the community, and even partnering with other organizations who are also getting subsequent value out of the work and making a difference in our local communities. I have a client in DC, and that money that we get from that client is spent here in Ohio and Cincinnati.
Where our money is going back into the communities, we're paying the quarterly earnings tax that help pave roads, that help trash get collected, that pay for first responders. We're very much an active part of the community.
That $1.44 billion is really great, and people should be very proud of that accomplishment, but we still have a ways to go. We're below the national average, and so that means we've got a goal in sight, and we can develop strategies as a community in order to reach that goal. And it's important to reach that goal because these businesses add to the character, the vibrancy, the quality of life of Cincinnati. They pay taxes, they provide jobs. And so all of these things support providing more resources to help these businesses grow. And most of them are small. And so my hope is 2 or 3 years from now, we'll do another study and we'll be able to see and track the growth and see where that growth occurred.
Now, nationwide during this pandemic, Forbes magazine reported Black-owned small businesses were more than twice as likely to close. Eric Kearney says the number here in the Cincinnati region is about 30% of businesses have not been able to navigate a successful path to survival. Meanwhile, the Washington Post reported a slight rebound the last few months of 2020. But as this pandemic continues, so does the economic pain. Well, she nearly lost her life fighting for social justice. Cincinnati's Betty Daniels Roseman tells her story of courage when Let's Talk Cincy returns. "60 years ago in New Orleans, a young college student who had dedicated her life to the fight for racial equality nearly lost her life. You see, her name is Betty Daniels Roseman. She had a brush with death as a freedom rider in a small Mississippi town. She's 81 years old now and lives right here in Cincinnati. She spoke with our Ashley Kirkland about her experiences then and her feelings about our recent protests.
We knew every time we took a ride that if we died, we died.
Was there fear among you and your friends when you went out, or a fear that maybe you weren't doing the right things or going to the right places, that you would be stopped by police or harassed?
Oh, you would be stopped, but you had to, if they tell you to move, for instance, if you got on a Metro bus and a white person wanted your seat, they could insist that you move and go to the back of the bus because that part was for black people. And if you didn't do what they said, you would be arrested. So that was always, you had to do it or you paid consequences.
At 21, Betty Daniels Roseman, then Betty Daniels, decided to leave school at LSU to join the Freedom Riders.
I went through some of the training. One of the girls slapped me and almost knocked me down, but that was part of your training to see if you would retaliate, and you couldn't retaliate.
Betty and 4 others went on a freedom ride from New Orleans to Mobile, Alabama, just days after another group's bus was bombed.
On the way back, when we got to a little town in Mississippi, now Freedom Riders were testers. Their job was to test the facilities to see if they were now following the law. My job was to make a phone call. When I got off and went over to the phone booth, a truck of men, a pickup truck, white men, pulled up at the little bus station. They literally dragged Frank and the 3 girls out, put them in the back of the truck, and drove off. Now I knew if they found me, it would have been another lynching that night.
All of this because you were black?
Of course. Everything was because of that. I mean, if you were black, you just didn't stand a chance.
And here we sit today in 2021. We've had our first black president.
Oh.
We have had our first female and black and South Asian vice president. How do you feel about where we are today?
Oh, I feel good. I really do. Good to know that people were still willing to try to see that change will come. Mm-hmm. And there are still people who risk their life to see that this happens.
And do you feel that we have achieved or are close to the dream that Dr. King spoke of?
You know, we have work to do. It ain't over till God says it's over. The Bible tells us this. We must love each other, love our neighbor as ourselves. We are compelled to love one another, and that's what's missing in the world today.
Mrs. Roseman is an amazing woman. I've known her for several years. Believe it or not, she just recently stopped working last year, but she still keeps a busy schedule, speaking to folks young and old about the work she and so many others did and her hope of a better future. She plans on releasing a book of her poetry soon. She says what drove her then and what should drive us all now is to be the change we want to see in the world. Well, up next, the story of another Cincinnati history maker who broke barriers in politics. It's a legacy carried on by his family. That and more when Let's Talk Cincy continues. 55 years ago, William Mallory Sr. was elected to the Ohio House of Representatives. Little did anyone know at the time it was the start of a 28-year career in the Ohio legislature. He was elected Majority Floor Leader, the first African American to hold that position. He retired in 1994, holding the record of being the longest-serving Majority Leader in Ohio's history and the longest-serving Ohio representative from Hamilton County. Mr. Mallory passed away back in 2013 at the age of 82, but his legacy lives on through his wife and 6 children who have also dedicated their lives to community service in one form or another, including his son, former Cincinnati Mayor Mark Mallory.
Well, he was definitely a unique character. This is somebody who grew up in the West End on Ayler Street in a family that did not have a lot of resources and decided at a very early age, I think he was 12 when he decided he was going to go into politics. And he did that, and not only went into politics, but became very, very successful and became the first African-American Majority Floor Leader of the state house in Columbus. So this was something that he set his mind out to do. This is something that he saw as a way of helping bring resources to communities that don't normally have a big voice in Columbus and in state politics. And he continued to work even after he left the state house. He continued to bring people together. He continued to look for resources and look for ways to be able to help communities and help individuals. This was just a major, major part of his life. And anybody who ever interacted with my dad knew that he did 2 things. 1, he told stories. He liked to tell a lot of stories. And 2, he'd ask a lot of questions. And the reason he'd ask questions was because he wanted to stay fresh. He wanted to know what was going on. He wanted to know how things worked. He wanted to know what things were on people's minds and what concerns they had. That's another reason that he caught the bus all the time. My dad did have a driver's license, and he did drive at some point in the 1960s. However, for the most part, he did not operate a motor vehicle, and he caught the bus everywhere he went unless he bummed a ride from you. But when he was on that bus, he saw that as sort of the university. This is where he got information. This is where he gave information. My dad would be really excited about the fact that Kamala Harris is the Vice President of the United States. There are still all these firsts that we have to achieve as Blacks in America. And I think in his lifetime, he saw obviously a lot of firsts. But still, for us, we're still seeing a lot of firsts in our lifetimes. And I think he would just be very, very excited about that. But he'd also be really dismayed at how toxic politics has become. He was very much into decorum. He was very much into being respectful in how you engage. That doesn't mean that he wouldn't fight. He absolutely would fight. But there is an honorable way to fight. There's an honorable way to have a disagreement. But there's also an honorable way to come to some resolution and come to a solution for problems that continue to plague us. And some of the unprecedented problems that face us certainly should not have been partisan. I think he would have had real difficulty dealing with that concept.
Your father was such a great historian. Tell people about his love for history and how he shared it with everyone.
My dad really believed that history served 2 purposes. One, it was a way to help us to understand how we got to the point where we are. It was meant to remind us of our heritage, meant to keep us grounded, but also it was a forecast, potentially a forecast into the future. By looking back through history, you could get guidelines to what could become in the future. And my dad was always imparting his knowledge about history to other people. He was always making sure that we cataloged not only his history, but the history of others, the history of other achievers, the history of just regular folks. And so, this was a big deal for him. A lot of his historical papers and his speeches and his photographs and recordings are on deposit at the Cincinnati Museum Center. And, that place is a good depository of all kinds of information. And he wanted to make sure that his history was kept there so that people could always get an idea of what he worked on and the kinds of things that were important to him and his work.
So talk about his love for Museum Center and the role that he played in the facility.
Well, my dad's history with that building itself goes back a very long way. The Union Terminal building was an iconic structure when it was built. And my dad and his friends used to hang out at that building. When he was young, they went to the area where the bushes were, and they laid in the bushes because it was cooler there in the summer. He actually took his first train ride in 1943 when he was 12 years old from Union Terminal. He went down to Louisville to visit his family. He worked as a busboy in the Gateway restaurant that was in the Union Terminal, and he shined shoes there. And he, like I said, he grew up sort of hanging out in that place, and he called it the Cotton Club. It was the Cotton Club for blacks at the time, right? Because it was open and free, and you could get into it. And then years later, of course, when he's in the state legislature, he was approached about the concept of the Union Terminal building being turned into the museum center. And he went to work and was able to get $8 million from the state of Ohio to help convert that building into the museum center that it is today. He was very, very proud of that accomplishment and that achievement. But he also saw his work as, again, a way to make sure that history was being preserved, because part of the mission of the Museum Center is to incorporate the history of Cincinnati in a lot of the collections that they have there that they took over from the Historical Society. He was there when Ezra Charles came back to Cincinnati after becoming the heavyweight champion of the world. And he was out there to see if he could get a glimpse and greet Ezra Charles, and so was my mother. But the two of them didn't know each other on that day. They wouldn't meet for another 2 years. But that building brought them together on that day. And he just spent a lot of time in his later years going there, hanging out at events, going to the Historical Society. Sometimes he'd just go down there and walk around or buy ice cream. But this was a place that he had a real affinity for. And when he passed away in 2013, this is where we held his memorial service.
I remember it well. I was honored when the family asked me to officiate the memorial service for Mr. Mallory. One final note, 1986, Mr. Mallory filed a lawsuit charging discrimination in the election of judges on a county-wide basis. As a result, 14 districts were established, making it easier for African-American candidates to win seats in the Hamilton County Municipal Court. Well, social media plays a huge role in our lives. Frequently, it's the way we become aware of situations when racism and bias negatively impact people's lives. We see confrontations that go viral and followers weigh in on what they see. Our upcoming special, The Hard Truth About Bias, looks at how we respond when we see bias played out in real time. Matter of Fact's host, Soledad O'Brien, has a preview.
To take a closer look at the role bias plays in our everyday lives, we invited 7 people from around the country to participate in a unique social experience, using viral videos that captured racial bias on camera. When the videos ended, they joined a virtual video call where they continued their conversation face to face.
I think you're touching on real cornerstone of the problem. Everything in America teaches all of us that fear of a black man is reasonable.
It's about criminalizing behavior that is not criminal. We got to stop looking at things that are legal for everybody else and saying, you know what, I just don't want that group doing that here.
It seems like we have this behavior where we're willing to break the rules when it's convenient for us. And when someone asks us to follow the rules, then we start to get abrasive.
It's not a white thing, a black thing. It is a how we deal with it as Americans, as one people in the most successful democracy on earth.
Now you have 2 chances to watch the show. The Matter of Fact listening tour, The Hard Truth About Bias, airs Saturday, February 20th at 8 p.m. on WLWT. And again on Thursday, February 25th at 10:30 p.m. on MeTV Channel 5.2. Up next, a life or death race through snow and traffic-clogged roads in Cincinnati. Hear from the first responders who made that daring drive when we return. As you know, it has been another brutal week of winter weather here in Greater Cincinnati. Heavy snow snarled traffic and closed schools. But it also created some heroes like the first responders who made it through the traffic jams to help deliver a life-saving package. They told their story to our Dan Griffin.
It helps or is gratifying to help someone, in this case here. And it was a team effort.
In the midst of a snowstorm, diligence and care caught on dash cam.
My thought was, how are we going to get this organ through this gridlock traffic?
First responders working together to get a boy a set of donor lungs to Cincinnati Children's Hospital.
The traffic was horrible the entire ride. I was just trying to squeeze in between cars.
That's the voice of Jason Bauman, a CVG firefighter and EMT, driving the red truck from the airport with 3 doctors and the lungs on board. Their flight was diverted from Lunken because of snow. They had only a 2-hour window.
We spent most of the time driving in the shoulder in about 10 inches of snow on 75.
Bauman says they hit gridlock at Hopple Street. That's when Lieutenant Brian Norris and the Cincinnati Police Traffic Unit came to help.
It was chaotic, to say the least.
Specialist Joe Stevens knew someone had selflessly given this gift of life a second chance.
This was truly an important event, as there's no way to mess up. We had to get this vehicle to the hospital with the doctor and the organ.
He helped them weave through traffic, paralyzed by precipitation.
It's a weight off my shoulders.
And together, they weathered a perfect storm right to the front doors.
It does make me feel very good that I was involved, just in a little way, to help some family maybe have a better life.
Wow, what a fascinating story that is. Well, that does it for the program today. Of course, we want to hear from you. Be sure to email us your ideas anytime here at WLWT. Well, again, that does it for this edition of Let's Talk Cincy. Thanks for joining us. I'm Curtis Fuller. Hope to see you again next week.